All around us, sound shapes our daily experience, sometimes as a gentle backdrop, other times as a jarring interruption. Whether it is the hum of traffic, the intricate weave of a symphony, or the persistent whir of an office fan, these auditory signals do more than fill silence. They interact with our brains in subtle and profound ways. Music and noise, though both composed of vibrations in the air, occupy distinct roles in the landscape of the mind. Understanding how we perceive these sounds and how they influence our capacity to concentrate, solve problems, or create reveals much about the workings of cognition itself. Recent advances in neuroscience illuminate the mechanisms by which sound can sharpen focus, foster creativity, or, conversely, hinder mental performance. As we enter the soundscape of the mind, we begin by asking, how does the brain distinguish between order and chaos in what it hears? Imagine, for a moment, the chorus of your everyday life. Perhaps it is the gentle hum of a refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant thrum of traffic beyond your window, or the melody of a favorite song drifting from a speaker. Each of these sounds, mundane or musical, threads itself into the fabric of your mind, shaping your experience of the world in ways both subtle and profound. But what exactly separates the harmonious strains of music from the cacophony of noise? And how does the brain, that extraordinary organ, sift through this ever-present soundscape to help you focus, feel, and think? At its core, both music and noise are forms of vibrational energy. Sound is simply waves of pressure transmitted through air, picked up by the ear and transformed into signals the brain can interpret. Yet the distinction between music and noise is not just a matter of physics. While both arise from vibrations, their differences are as much about perception as about their acoustic properties. From a physical acoustic perspective, music typically exhibits structured, patterned regularity. Think of the steady rhythm of a drum or the repeating motif of a melody, while noise is often marked by irregularity and unpredictability. But the story does not end there. Subjectively, the line between music and noise blurs, colored by culture, context, and the listener's expectations. A symphony to one ear may be a racket to another. These categories are not fixed. They flow and shift within the mind's interpretation. The human body is deeply attuned to sound. Hearing evolved as a vital sense, enabling early humans and many creatures before us to detect threats or opportunities in their environment. This evolutionary legacy remains today, evident in the way our bodies can respond to sound, sometimes even before we are consciously aware of it. For example, both music and noise can activate not just the auditory system, but also the touch and vestibular systems. You might feel the pulse of bass in your chest at a concert or sway unconsciously in time with a lullaby. This multi-sensory nature of music perception reveals the complex ways in which sound interacts with our bodies, linking physical sensation to emotional experience. From a psychological perspective, the boundaries between music and noise are even more fluid. Research suggests that the structure of sound greatly influences how we interpret it. Slower, steady sounds, even if generated by non-musical sources, can take on a musical quality, while rapid, irregular noises are more likely to be perceived as speech or chaotic clatter. The mind carves out categories: music, speech, noise, based on patterns, rhythms, and expectations, drawing on both bottom-up sensory input and top-down cognitive processes shaped by memory and culture. This intricate dance of perception unfolds across the brain. Contrary to the idea of a single music center, music processing is distributed throughout various regions. The auditory cortex serves as a hub, taking in raw sound from the environment and beginning to organize it into meaningful patterns. But music and, more broadly, all sound also engages networks involved in emotion, movement, memory, and attention. When you listen to a song, different parts of your brain are recruited, some to track rhythm and pitch, others to evoke memories or stir feelings, and still others to prepare your body to move in response to the beat. The brain's need to make sense of the soundscape is not merely aesthetic, it is essential for survival and daily functioning. Our environments are saturated with overlapping sounds, each competing for attention. The auditory system must rapidly and efficiently parse this complexity, distinguishing what is relevant: a friend's voice, a warning siren from the background. This is where the neural mechanisms of attention become critical. Attention acts as a kind of mental searchlight, illuminating certain sounds for closer inspection while relegating others to the background. Neuroscientific research shows that attention is not a passive filter, but an active, dynamic process shaped by both immediate sensory cues and our conscious intentions. The process begins at the very entry point of sound into the body. As sound waves enter the ear, they are funneled through the ear canal, striking the eardrum and setting off a cascade of mechanical and neural events. Tiny hair cells in the cochlea convert these vibrations into electrical signals, which travel along the auditory nerve to the brainstem and onward to the auditory cortex. Here, the brain performs a remarkable feat, filtering, organizing, and interpreting this raw data based on frequency, intensity, and timing. The auditory cortex does not work alone. It operates in concert with other brain regions, including those responsible for attention, memory, and even motor coordination. Within the auditory cortex, neurons are finely tuned to respond to specific features of sound. Some are especially sensitive to the structured patterns found in music, while others are more attuned to the irregularities of noise. This selectivity underlies our ability to recognize a familiar melody within a noisy room or to pick out a single voice amid a crowd, a phenomenon sometimes called the cocktail party effect. Artificial neural networks modeled after these biological systems help researchers understand how the brain learns to make such distinctions, offering insights into both the capabilities and limits of auditory perception. Attention, as it relates to hearing, is both broad and nuanced. It is guided by bottom-up processes, such as the suddenness or loudness of a sound that grabs our focus, as well as by top-down influences reflecting our goals, expectations, and prior experiences. When you are engrossed in a conversation at a bustling cafe, your attention helps you zero in on your companion's words, filtering out the din of clinking cups and background chatter. But attention is not all or nothing. It is dynamic and can shift rapidly as the acoustic environment or your priorities change. Scientists describe this as the multi-stability of auditory scene analysis, the brain's capacity to reorganize its interpretation of sound in real time, depending on where attention is directed. This flexibility is vital. In complex acoustic environments, pre-attentive processes operate in the background, automatically grouping sounds that share similar features, such as pitch or rhythm, and separating those that are distinct. Only a subset of this sensory input ever reaches full conscious awareness, depending on what the brain deems important at that moment. The interplay between automatic and controlled attention ensures that the brain can adapt to new information while maintaining focus when needed. Interestingly, the boundaries of auditory perception extend beyond what is actually heard. The brain is capable of auditory mental imagery, the ability to hear music, voices, or sounds in the mind's ear, even in the absence of external stimuli. This mental rehearsal recruits many of the same neural pathways involved in real-time listening, drawing on memory and, at times, motor systems that prepare the body for action. The experience of imagining a song or replaying a conversation in your head is not a mere echo. It is an active construction shaped by past experiences and current context. This capacity highlights the profound integration of perception, memory, and imagination in the auditory domain. The complexity of the auditory system is mirrored in its biological underpinnings. The anatomy of hearing encompasses not just the ear itself, but a sophisticated network of pathways and centers in the brain. Starting with the external ear, sound waves are channeled inward, where they are transduced and encoded with remarkable precision. Each stage along this pathway refines the information, preparing it for higher-level interpretation. The cochlea, for example, acts as a frequency analyzer, breaking down complex sounds into their constituent pitches. The auditory cortex then synthesizes this information, allowing for the recognition of melody, harmony, and rhythm, or, in the case of noise, the detection of patterns or the lack thereof. Parsing the auditory world is a feat of both biological engineering and cognitive artistry. In daily life, we rarely notice the extraordinary work our brains perform in making sense of the soundscape. Whether you are savoring a piece of music or navigating a noisy street, your auditory system is constantly filtering, grouping, and prioritizing. Attention enables you to focus on what matters, while memory and experience color your interpretation, rendering the familiar comforting or the novel intriguing. Despite advances in our understanding, gaps remain. Scientists continue to investigate how precisely the brain distinguishes music from noise at a neural level, and what factors determine why one person may find a particular sound soothing while another finds it grating. The subjective nature of auditory experience resists easy categorization, shaped as it is by individual history, cultural background, and situational context. What is clear, however, is that the soundscape of the mind is never static. It is a living, shifting field of perception, as responsive to the world outside as to the inner workings of memory, intention, and attention. Music and noise, far from being fixed categories, are points along a spectrum, continually negotiated by the brain's remarkable capacity for adaptation and meaning-making. Through the interplay of sensation, perception, and cognition, each moment of listening is both a biological process and an act of interpretation. The next time you pause to notice the sounds around you, or the music playing only in your mind, You are witnessing the extraordinary power of the auditory system. It is an orchestra within, tuning itself to the world, guiding your thoughts, shaping your feelings, and underpinning the very act of being present. In the chapters to follow, we will explore how this soundscape influences not just perception, but the very heart of cognitive performance, creativity, and emotion. For now, it is enough to marvel at the astonishing intricacy of the system that lets you hear, attend, and understand the ceaseless music of life. Imagine sitting in a cafe, textbook open before you, as the soft strains of a familiar song drift through the air. You might notice your focus sharpening, your attention drawn to the material in front of you. But then, a sudden burst of laughter or the jarring clang of dishes sends your mind reeling, your thoughts scattering. Scenes like this, so common in daily life, lie at the heart of a scientific puzzle. How do music and noise, these ever-present sounds, shape the workings of the human brain, especially our ability to think, remember, and create? In recent years, scientists have delved into this intricate relationship, seeking to unravel how different types of sound influence cognitive performance. The evidence reveals a story that is both nuanced and deeply dependent on the characteristics of the sound itself, the context in which it is heard, and the unique wiring of each individual brain. At the foundation of this emerging science is the realization that both music and noise are more than mere background. They are active agents capable of shifting our mental states. According to a 2024 review in Brain Sciences, there is substantial evidence that the sounds we encounter, whether carefully composed melodies or the chaotic rush of urban noise, can sway our emotions and impact core cognitive abilities such as attention, memory, and creativity. But the effects are far from uniform. They depend on specific features of the sound, like tempo or loudness, and on who is listening. What soothes and sharpens one person's mind may distract or even distress another. To understand why, it helps to examine the mechanisms underlying these effects. One key pathway is arousal, the way sounds can activate our bodies and minds, nudging us toward heightened alertness or, conversely, toward relaxation. Research summarized in Science Direct confirms that both music and non-musical sounds can shift our physiological arousal, a change often reflected in heart rate and even in patterns of brain activity measured by electroencephalogram. This, in turn, influences how well we perform on tasks requiring concentration or quick thinking. But not all sound is equal. Studies have shown that specific properties, such as the speed of music or the frequency content of noise, can lead to dramatically different outcomes. For instance, an investigation published in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences in 2025 compared the effects of slow beat music, fast beat music, and a type of noise known as brown noise on attention and subjective experience. Slow beat music was found to enhance focus and attentional orienting, lower heart rate, and foster pleasurable relaxation. Fast beat music, on the other hand, could be energizing but might also tip the balance toward overstimulation, especially for sensitive listeners. Brown noise, a deep, rumbling sound with more energy at lower frequencies, had its own distinctive impact, sometimes calming, sometimes distracting, depending on context. Noise, particularly in its louder and more unpredictable forms, tends to have a less favorable reputation when it comes to cognitive performance. Experimental studies, such as those reported in the open-access Macedonian Journal of Medical Sciences in 2019, have shown that higher noise levels increase mental workload and impair both attention and working memory. The effects are not merely subjective. They are mirrored in changes to brain activity patterns. When exposed to noise, the brain's networks must work harder to filter out irrelevant input, a process that can drain cognitive resources away from the task at hand. Further evidence from an experimental study published on PubMed confirms that as noise levels rise, working memory, sustained attention, and reaction time all suffer. The nature of the noise matters too. Speech noise, background chatter, or overlapping voices is particularly disruptive, as the brain struggles to disentangle meaningful information from the clutter. Even moderate increases in sound pressure, as low as 60 decibels, have been shown to significantly impair auditory working memory, according to research available on Science Direct. Yet, not all noise is detrimental. The relationship between noise and cognition is surprisingly nonlinear. A study from Nature Scientific Reports in 2022 found that moderate levels of white noise, a steady, unobtrusive hiss, can actually enhance cognitive performance and foster creativity. The explanation, known as the moderate brain arousal model, suggests that a mild level of sensory stimulation may help the brain reach an optimal state of alertness, primed for flexible thinking. But this benefit has limits. As noise levels climb, stress increases and cognitive performance declines. The persistent presence of noise, especially at high levels, raises more serious concerns. reviews from Cognitive Vitality and Lone Star Neurology document that chronic exposure to loud or unpredictable noise can lead to neural imbalances, cognitive decline, and a heightened risk of anxiety, depression, and even neurodegenerative conditions. There is evidence that long-term noise exposure not only impairs attention and decision-making, but may also increase the risk of dementia. The subjective experience of noise, whether it is perceived as intrusive or ignorable, shapes these outcomes as well, highlighting a complex interplay between the external environment and internal perception. Within this landscape of sound, music emerges as a striking contrast to noise, with an array of positive effects on the brain's capacity to learn, remember, and adapt. Neuroscientists at Georgia Tech, as reported in 2024, have explored how familiar and emotionally charged music can enhance concentration and reshape memory. When we listen to music that resonates with us, it can act as a cognitive boost, making it easier to absorb new information or recall what we have already learned. These findings have intriguing implications for therapy, especially for individuals facing memory loss or learning challenges. The transformative power of music extends beyond the fleeting moment. A review published in Brain, Behavior, Immunity, and Health in 2023 describes how music can induce neuroplasticity, a reshaping of neural networks that underpins learning, social bonding, and language processing. Over time, musical training and even regular listening can enhance cognitive function and protect against decline, as summarized by Cognitive Vitality in 2019. The benefits span attention, reasoning, and processing speed, suggesting that music is not merely entertainment, but a tool for mental resilience. Still, the effects of music are not universally positive, nor are they guaranteed in every setting. A study at Harding University, for instance, found that silence can sometimes be the optimal backdrop for learning, supporting superior cognitive performance compared to music or noise. This suggests that the value of music depends on context, task difficulty, and perhaps most importantly, the listener's personal preferences and habits. Diving deeper into the mechanisms, one influential theory, the arousal mood hypothesis, offers a framework for understanding how music's impact unfolds. According to research from Valparaiso University, music can modulate both mood and arousal, setting the stage for cognitive performance. Uplifting or calming music might boost mood and sharpen focus, while music that jars or irritates could have the opposite effect. The brain's reward systems, too, are implicated. Pleasurable music engages neural circuits involved in motivation and emotion, which can indirectly enhance learning. The interplay between sound and attention is particularly fascinating. Research from Stanford in 2007 found that music engages brain areas responsible for attention, prediction, and memory updating, with peak activity occurring during musical transitions. This suggests that music's structure, its shifts and surprises, can stimulate the brain to stay alert, anticipate what comes next, and integrate new information. Other studies have confirmed that music can, at least temporarily, boost intelligence and working memory, providing a cognitive edge during demanding tasks. Sound therapy and rhythm-based interventions are also gaining traction as tools for cognitive enhancement. Research at UT Dallas has explored how rhythm and structured auditory stimulation can improve both cognitive and sensory function, including language processing. This opens up new possibilities for rehabilitation and support in populations with language or attentional difficulties. But what about the subtle, everyday presence of background sound? Studies from the University of Alberta reveal that even modest background noise alters brain activity during cognitive tasks. The brain must allocate extra resources to suppress distractions, especially when the noise is variable or unpredictable, like the fluid sounds of the outdoors. This filtering process is taxing, and over time, it can sap mental energy. The emotional dimension of sound is never far from the cognitive. A 2021 study in Frontiers in Psychology found that relaxing music can reduce errors in cognitive tasks compared to noise, especially on simpler tasks. Conversely, noise was found to have a detrimental effect, increasing mistakes and undermining performance. Here, music's potential to soothe and organize the mind comes to the fore, acting as a buffer against the mental fragmentation that noise can induce. Individual differences remain a central theme throughout this research. Some people thrive with background music, their minds buoyed by familiar melodies, while others crave silence to achieve their best work. Even the same person may respond differently at different times. What helps focus one day might be a hindrance the next. Factors such as personality, musical training, and even genetic variations may play a role, though the science here is still unfolding. One area where the evidence is clear, however, is in the risks of prolonged noise exposure. Chronic loud noise not only damages hearing, but also impairs broader cognitive functions, including attention, decision-making, and motor control. The consequences ripple outward, affecting productivity, mood, and overall brain health. Amid this intricately woven soundscape, the brain's ability to adapt is both its greatest strength and, at times, its vulnerability. Music can sculpt neural pathways, foster new connections, and offer a shield against cognitive decline. Noise, especially when inescapable or overwhelming, can erode attention and memory, and over the long term, contribute to stress and disease. In the end, the science of music, noise, and the brain is a story of dynamic balance. The right sound, at the right moment, can unlock creativity and sharpen the mind. The wrong sound, too loud, too chaotic, too persistent, can scatter thoughts and sap energy. It is a dance between external stimulus and inner response, mediated by the ever-adaptable networks of the human brain. As we move forward, the challenge is not only to understand these effects more deeply, but to harness them, shaping our environments, our habits, and even our therapies to support the best possible cognitive health. The soundtrack of our lives is never neutral. Every note, every murmur, every burst of noise leaves its trace, guiding the rhythms of thought and the possibilities of the mind. If you step into any modern workspace, classroom, or bustling cafe, you will notice a striking phenomenon. Nearly everyone is curating their own private auditory landscape. Earbuds in, playlists selected, the hum of collective concentration is punctuated by the faint rhythm of music leaking from headphones. Beneath this everyday ritual lies a complex web of individual preferences, personality traits, and task demands, making the question, does music help or hinder our thinking? Far more nuanced than it first appears. Science now reveals with growing clarity that the impact of music, noise, and silence on cognitive performance is deeply personal, and that understanding these individual differences is key to using sound as a tool for mental optimization. Personality emerges as one of the most powerful mediators in the relationship between sound and cognition. Research from the Rowan Center, LA draws a clear line between personality traits, such as introversion and extroversion, and the effects of music on learning and cognitive performance. Introverts, who tend to be more sensitive to environmental stimulation, often find background music distracting, especially when tasks require deep focus or complex reasoning. Extroverts, in contrast, are more likely to thrive with a musical backdrop, particularly when the music is energizing or familiar. This pattern is echoed in a study published by Science Direct, which found that introverts' performance on cognitive tasks suffered notably in the presence of both vocal and instrumental music, whereas extroverts showed either no impairment or even slight improvement. The physiological underpinnings of these effects were explored by a team at Belmont University in 2023, who reported that introverts not only performed better in silence, but also displayed lower physiological arousal such as heart rate and skin conductance compared to extroverts. For extroverts, music appeared to boost both mood and physiological readiness, providing an optimal level of stimulation for mental work. Yet, personality is only one piece of the puzzle. Task type plays a pivotal role in determining whether music acts as a help or hindrance. Evidence from the University of Arkansas suggests that the complexity of the task at hand can completely change the equation. For tasks demanding language, reading comprehension, or intricate problem-solving, music, especially with lyrics, can interfere with performance. Lyrics tend to compete for the brain's linguistic resources, creating a bottleneck that slows processing and increases errors. By contrast, for repetitive or less cognitively demanding tasks, such as data entry or routine paperwork, music may alleviate boredom, sustain attention, and even enhance productivity. This effect is especially pronounced when individuals control their own music choices, which fosters a sense of autonomy and a positive mood. Musical preference quickly enters the picture as well. Studies from Pepperdine University and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas show that the type of music a person enjoys is not just a matter of taste, but a significant determinant of its cognitive effects. In one puzzle-solving study, 68% of participants performed better when listening to their preferred music, suggesting that enjoyment itself may be a catalyst for improved focus and efficiency. Preferred music appears to enhance the brain's reward circuitry, boosting dopamine and motivation-critical ingredients for sustained mental effort. Conversely, exposure to disliked or unfamiliar music can provoke irritation or distraction, undermining any potential benefits. This highlights the importance of personalization. What sharpens one person's mind may dull another's. There are subtler factors at play as well. The sonic energy of background music, how lively, rhythmic, or mellow it is, can change its impact on cognition. Evidence suggests that upbeat instrumental workflow, music, carefully engineered to be non-intrusive, can elevate mood and productivity for many people. Yet, even here, responses are not universal. Some individuals find energizing music invigorating, while others may feel overstimulated or anxious, especially if they are sensitive to external stimuli or prone to distraction. The very features that make music motivating for one listener, its tempo, complexity, or emotional tone, can be overwhelming for another. Generational and cultural factors further complicate the landscape. University of Arkansas researchers note that generational preferences play a role in how employees use music at work. Younger workers, raised in the era of ubiquitous streaming, are more likely to use music to manage mood and focus, while some older workers may find background music distracting or unnecessary. Cultural background also shapes both musical taste and expectations about silence, noise, and productivity, though the research context here provides only hints, not consensus. From these findings, a handful of practical strategies have emerged, tools for harnessing the power of sound to optimize cognitive performance. Neuroscience-informed advice, as summarized by Fast Company and Corporate Vision, encourages experimentation with consistent rhythms and ambient sounds, which generally pose less risk of distraction than music with abrupt changes or prominent lyrics. For those seeking to boost focus, instrumental tracks, especially those designed to induce a flow state, tend to be more effective than vocal music. Allowing individuals to choose their own music, or to control when and how music is played, has been shown to improve both mood and task engagement. This sense of control appears nearly as important as the type of music itself. In workplace settings, integrating music thoughtfully, such as providing quiet zones, offering noise-canceling headphones, or rotating playlists to accommodate diverse preferences, can support productivity while respecting individual differences. Personal anecdotes, while not scientific proof, often echo the research. Writers and programmers report using carefully curated playlists, sometimes relying on so-called neuromodulation music tracks specifically engineered to stimulate focus or relaxation. These selections frequently feature steady, repetitive rhythms, minimal melodic variation, and ambient textures designed to fade into the background rather than demand attention. The goal is to provide just enough stimulation to block intrusive thoughts or environmental noise without tipping into distraction. Still, the efficacy of such strategies depends on self-awareness and trial and error. What works for a seasoned extrovert tackling spreadsheets may not suit an introvert absorbed in writing or analysis. Beyond boosting productivity, music's practical applications extend into therapy and cognitive rehabilitation. At Yale, clinicians have explored how making music, not just listening, can help individuals with psychosis reconnect with their environment, regain a sense of agency, and improve emotional and cognitive functioning. This therapeutic use of music relies less on preference or task type and more on music's capacity to structure experience, create routine, and foster engagement. Similarly, research from Levine Music highlights the remarkable resilience of musical memory in dementia patients. Even when other forms of memory falter, familiar songs can unlock moments of recognition, spark conversation, and improve quality of life. These findings point to a broader truth. Music's value is not confined to the typical workplace or classroom, but extends to settings where cognition and mood are under threat. The interplay of sound and cognition, then, is anything but simple. The evidence consistently warns against one-size-fits-all prescriptions. For every person who finds their groove with a certain playlist, there is another who needs silence to think clearly. For every task that benefits from a dash of sonic energy, there is one that demands the stillness of a quiet room. The science does not offer a universal soundtrack for productivity, but it does provide a framework for experimentation. Consider your own personality. Are you more introverted or extroverted? Reflect on the nature of your task. Is it creative, repetitive, or analytically demanding? Pay close attention to your own musical taste and how different genres, tempos, or even specific songs affect your mood and focus. And, perhaps most importantly, take advantage of your ability to control your auditory environment whenever possible. Whether through noise-canceling headphones, curated playlists, or strategic silence, this control may be the single most effective way to harness sound for cognitive gain. The future of research in this domain is promising but leaves many questions open. While studies have illuminated the importance of personality, preference, and task type, there remains much to learn about the neural mechanisms that translate sound into cognitive advantage or disadvantage. The subtleties of how musical structure, emotional tone, and even cultural familiarity interact with brain networks are only beginning to be understood. Similarly, the long-term effects of habitual music listening, whether it trains attention, reshapes neural pathways, or influences cognitive aging, await further exploration. For now, the practical implications are clear. Background music, when matched to the listener's personality, preference, and the demands of the task, can be a powerful ally for focus, productivity, and well-being. But the same music, mismatched to context or individual, can just as easily become a liability. The art and science of managing one's soundscape, then, is not about rigid rules, but about sensitivity to oneself and one's environment. It is about listening not just to music, but to the subtle rhythms of one's own mind. And in that listening, there is the possibility of tuning not just our soundscape, but our very capacity to think, create, and flourish.